Hello and welcome back to another video. Now if you are watching this video, no doubt you've clicked on it because I am pregnant. I have officially completed the first trimester. I am 13.5 weeks pregnant. I know in different parts of the world the first trimester ends at 14 weeks. Now in the UK where I am, it ends at 13 weeks. It's all very complicated. I don't know why people just couldn't make an agreement all around the world that it was like one time. I am just so excited to be able to talk about it. So I'm really looking forward to doing this video today, and you can just get a little bit more in depth about what happened in the process of obviously conceiving, the before part, and what's happened in this first trimester so far. So I will show you a little picture of the scan. It's not the best picture because we used the two better ones. I put them in frames just in Ed's office and then in the living room in the house. But you can see, I mean, on the video, it was definitely like the arms and legs were visible. But I think because this wriggler was just moving around so much, the lady was like, I'm really sorry, I just can't, it can't focus. So we were there for ages, which was absolutely fine. We just wanted more time in there, and I was like fascinated with looking at it, and it was somersaulting everywhere and doing different movements. So I was like, take your time. It's literally, it is no problem at all. So we are just so excited to be able to share and for me to be able to talk about it because it feels weird. I know I'm more active on Instagram than I have been on YouTube, but if you've been following me on here or follow me on Instagram, I've always, since like 7 years ago when I started, really been open and honest about different areas of my life, especially what I'm going through. So it felt really weird for not sharing what I was thinking about and what was consuming me every single day since October. So it's really lovely to be able to share and talk about this pregnancy journey so openly and honestly, which I will try and do to the best of my ability. I loved watching these videos when I was in the first trimester, but also in that 2-week wait in thinking that I've conceived, knowing really that I'd conceived, but it'd been too early to do a pregnancy test because the hormone levels just weren't there yet. So let's dive into the video. So first things first, I am 35 years old. I turned 35 in September. So I always knew at that age, it's kind of a bit of a stigma for women. You turn that age and it's like ooh, are you gonna get pregnant? Like, your time is running out. And to be honest, when I've spoken to a lot of experts on this topic, it isn't like when you hit 35, you just kind of like, your fertility just goes off a cliff. It is a kind of like gradual decline. And actually, one of the studies that I've read in the most recent studies, it's actually more like later on in your later 30s, around 37, and it is just a steady decline from there. But saying that, I know so many women who are around my age, but also a lot older, you know, in their early 40s, who are conceiving at the moment. And I also feel like just women in general, we are getting pregnant later on in life. But it is also something, fertility, that we do have to be aware of. But me and Ed, my partner, always knew that in 2023 that I wanted to be pregnant. But because obviously a lot of pregnancies, you don't just conceive straight away, regardless of what we were told when we were like 10 years old to try and scare us away, you don't just fall pregnant like that a lot of the time. In October time in 2022, we decided that we were ready to start trying for a baby. Now, I never thought that it would happen in the first month. I thought that it would probably take, you know, up to 6 months, which is a very normal amount of time, and I would still be pregnant in 2023. However, I wanted to give myself the best chance of conceiving quite quickly. Now, I've been using the Flow app, the FLO app, for about 2 years now. And it's really good to be able to track your cycle, and I'd always used it. And I knew that I had a regular cycle of around 27 and sometimes 28 days. So I could really guess when my fertility window was, which is about 5 days in the month, and obviously in the middle of those days that you ovulate. And so if you have a regular cycle, you can kind of guess that I would probably ovulate on day 13. However, me being me, I wanted to just do my research and just make sure I gave myself the best possible chance. So through watching a lot of these videos on YouTube, I looked at these strips, which were highly recommended, really cheap, from Amazon. I'll link them below actually. They're called Easy at Home. And so you get like 50 ovulation strips in a pack and 20 of these, they're just like cheapy strips, 20 pregnancy test strips. So on about day 10, I started, you basically have to wee on the stick about midday, and sometimes you can do it twice a day just to get like a really accurate line. So it's like a pregnancy test, so you always have one line and then it's always kind of like faded, the other line, the second line, until you come to 12 to 24 hours before you ovulate, the line gets darker. Now that's your LH surge. So that's your kind of like warning that your egg is going to be released. So that's when you ovulate. And so I knew through doing this happened for me on day 11. So I was like, okay, so I must ovulate around day 12. So that was really interesting because obviously flow apps and different kinds of apps that you use to track your cycle are kind of accurate, but we never know what our bodies are going to do from month to month. So if you want a really kind of accurate reading, if you are in the process of conceiving, I would definitely recommend that. And because I am quite a perfectionist, I like things to be precise, I actually had a notebook to like stick these strips in so I could just like see the line. So that was interesting to do, and I definitely, like I said, highly recommend those. So it was only literally like 4 days after or 5 days after I ovulated, and something just didn't seem right to me. I was well away from my period, and because I had regular cycles, I just know my body as well. I'm like highly aware of my body. So I knew getting period style cramps like 10 days away from when my period was due, I knew something wasn't right. I started to get a little bit of lower backache. I was just extremely tired, also quite thirsty, and I just realized these symptoms were just not right, and that was kind of like the first alarm bell that was ringing. And I tracked all these symptoms in my diary, and I thought maybe it is just in my head, because that's another thing. If you are trying to conceive, obviously your brain is hyper aware on symptoms. If I wasn't trying to conceive and I hadn't got that in my head to look for these symptoms, possibly I wouldn't be aware of them. However, something that really just confirmed it for me before I actually did a pregnancy test, and that was 6 days before my period began, I did my first pregnancy test. We went out for a meal before for Ed's brother's birthday, and we had a starter, and me and Ed always share starters and mains. We're funny about that. But this starter came, and it was something wrapped in bacon. And when the waitress put it down, it was like a waft of the strongest smelling bacon that you have ever smelled in your life. And I was like hit. I was almost like a wind tunnel. I was hit with it, and I immediately, just this sickness really came over me, and I was like, okay, something ain't right here. I think I'm definitely pregnant, because one of the pregnancy symptoms is food aversions, but also your sense of smell is really heightened. And so I did a pregnancy test the next day on one of the cheap easy at home pregnancy test strips, and it was actually negative. It was negative, but I still knew that I was ridiculously early to take a test. I was just really impatient, and I knew that it could be positive. So the next day I took a test, and the faintest of lines came up on the cheap strips. So I actually did a test on the clear blue tests, which are the more expensive ones, and technically I think it's 5 days before your missed period it can detect the HCG level. So I mean, you probably know this already, but that's what pregnancy test strips test for, the levels of HCG in, you know, the hormone. So it came up, you know, the slightest bit of a line, but any line is positive. And so I knew then that I was pregnant. So every day, obviously I didn't do this for the clear blue strips every day because they're expensive, but the easy at home cheap strips, I tested every day just to see the line getting darker and my hormone level kind of increasing, because that's obviously the good sign. And then like every 3 days up until my period and the day after my period, because I was still like in shock that it happened in the first month that I got pregnant so quickly, that I was, I did the clear blue test as well. So that was my 2-week wait and how I got pregnant and timed it obviously with the ovulation strips. But I definitely would caveat to say that women also do all this and on all they can in order to get pregnant, and just because you don't conceive within months, that is, you're not weird. It is not abnormal. It's very, very normal. I feel like ever so grateful that we conceived quickly, but I know that I'm not the norm as well. So definitely, if you are in the process of conceiving, just, you know, hang in there. Hang in there. The second thing is that how has this first trimester been? And even though I also feel like I completed the internet every week just Googling symptoms, Googling is this normal? I mean, my search on Google is, I mean, it's just ridiculous, to be honest. And Ed always says, stop Googling that, stop doing that, because it does make you feel highly anxious. So I would definitely recommend, if you can, just stop Googling so much, especially if you are in those first few weeks. And because we found out so quickly that we were pregnant, I think in a way the weeks just went extremely slowly, because especially in those first few weeks, it is really risky. It's like a tiny little sesame seed. It's the smallest little thing and anything can obviously go wrong, and it does all the time. So I was highly anxious throughout the first trimester. I've got to be honest. There was no time that I wasn't anxious, but especially in those first few weeks. And from around week 5, especially week 6, I started to get really unwell. The morning sickness, which they say morning sickness, it is not a morning sickness. It is an all-day sickness. Is just, it completely floors you like nothing else really. And it lasted from around the middle of week 5 to week 10. I completely lost any appetite for any food. I could eat toast and butter, but that was around about it. I couldn't even be in, we've got an open plan kitchen living area. I had to completely leave the room when Ed was making any food or even open the fridge. I really had to hold my nose to give Monty, my dog, his food. And I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be like that. I am a foodie. I like any food. So being hit with this wave of feeling like you've just got a permanent hangover, like extreme hangover every day, it just completely floors you. And even though I'd read a lot about it, I don't think you think it's gonna happen to you. and I don't know whether that's just a bit naive to think like that, but you just don't think it's gonna happen to you. And then also the tiredness. And I was trying to think about this, because it's not like you've had lack of sleep tiredness. It's almost like you are foggy behind the eyes, that you've lost all sense of personality. Like, there was moments though that I was lying on the sofa at like 2 p.m. and I physically couldn't get my body up, which is just so crazy to me. But apart from that, like, the sore boobs was just continuous. Again, quite a bit of backache in the first few weeks, but from around 10 weeks, and this was about the week before Christmas, I could gradually start introducing a few things into my diet. Like, if Ed made pasta, I really went off all vegetables, all like meats in general. But if Ed started cooking or we ordered a takeaway, I could eat, but I still had a really weird thing about cooking myself, which I love to cook. So it was just a bit of a weird thing for me. But luckily, around Christmas time, I really started to get my appetite back. Only there was a certain things that I had food aversions to. So that was really good around for Christmas, because we were obviously with a lot of family, which we'd already told. So I just didn't want to be that person who had to like sit in the corner and feel sick all the time. And if that was you around Christmas, if you were in those early stages, like, I feel for you. But I am just so happy to be out of that stage. And now it was like a week ago I started eating my normal food again that was pre-pregnancy, and now I'm really focused on what I can add into my diet rather than what I can take out. And I think that's really interesting, because going from someone who used to do bikini competitions, who used to focus on how lean that they could get and actually what they could take out of their diet and have so many artificial sweeteners, I'm now like, I just had cereal before, I'm like, right, I need a banana because I know that that's going to be really good for me. Or I've always got like satsumas and oranges, which I'm obsessed with at the moment, you know, anything like citrusy, and I'm pretty obsessed with any like sour sweets. But it's all about what I can add in, what foods I can add in, salads, and I'm still craving all, like, you know, the burgers, the pizzas, which I definitely have as well. But I feel like in this phase of my second trimester, because my first trimester I literally couldn't really eat anything, that I really want to focus, whilst I feel generally pretty well in myself other than this nasally cold, that I really want to focus on getting as much goodness in my body for both me, to make me feel good, and obviously, you know, the thing growing inside of me. That's really, really important as well. But I think the questions that I had on my Instagram when I did a Q&A story before, just to see what you would like to hear on this, a lot of it was about exercise. And what exercise do I do now? And I would definitely say there were moments where I couldn't leave the house even to go for a walk in the first trimester. So if you're in that stage where you feel like you literally cannot do anything, just definitely give yourself a break. I hardly did anything in the first trimester, but now I really love doing at-home Pilates workouts and just walking a lot. I'm really also focused and getting into doing exercises which are strengthening my pelvic floor as well. That's really important. We want to be strong and we want to feel good, and we want to prepare ourselves and train ourselves for labour as well. And that's another thing that my focus has really shifted on, how I physically look and like how I want to feel. So I would say, you know, don't worry too much. Comparison on the internet, and I found myself in the first trimester comparing myself so much to people who were doing, you know, all the workouts and eating green smoothies, and every time I like looked at that I was like, oh my gosh, how am I on the sofa like vertical and feeling like death? Like, is this ever gonna be me? But what I would say is every single person is different, and this is why pregnancy is just, it's wonderful, but it's also tricky to navigate, because what one person goes through, another person just doesn't. And that's why some of the guidelines, you know, about gaining weight, and I definitely gained weight in the first trimester. The last time I got weighed was at my booking appointment from the midwife, but you know, I don't know how much I put on, but I definitely have. You know, I've got a bump now and I feel bigger in my body. But I think a lot of people worry about weight gain and how much is the healthy weight to put on. But it's like anyone who isn't pregnant, everyone's body is different. So there's no like, there shouldn't be any kind of like stipulation. You shouldn't like go off to the pound exactly how much you're supposed to gain, because everyone's pregnancy, everyone's body is so different. So if you are in that comparison cycle, just cut yourself some slack, give yourself a break, stop Googling, or just like start following more realistic accounts. I've already seen accounts that I'm like, you know, I'm not living that perfect life. It's not all like sunshine and roses, but follow accounts that are much more realistic and who you feel inspired by, but also who you relate to. Never follow anyone, and this is just like a general thing, pregnant or not, that make you feel like rubbish. So I know that I haven't covered absolutely everything, but I really hope to do more of these videos as my pregnancy progresses, and hopefully I will do one also at the end of the second trimester, which feels super long away at the moment. But as always, I'm sure, you know, it will feel long, but when you look back, it will feel like it's gone past in a heartbeat. So I'm just gonna try and enjoy every moment that I can. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.